Jonathan. Sasha's gonna laugh because I clap every time I go live. We are here today. This is, I'm really excited about today. We have an amazing guest who I met recently within the past couple months. And I saw, anyway, okay, so doing lives, going live out there, but these are also going to be created into a podcast as well. So I'm Jonathan Schlossberg, as you're seeing this, and I am the host. Maybe Sasha will come in every once in a while, but this is probably my thing because I'm an extrovert. I love to connect with people, and so I've been meeting some of the most amazing, interesting people out there, and I want to bring them to you because some of the stuff that I've been learning, some of the stuff that I've been seeing is just truly phenomenal, and the things that, for example, our guest today is going to share literally is like, hey, you want some free money? So, with that being said, I am going to bring in our today's guest after I probably let my dog in because my dog is deciding to want to scratch at the door. So, I'll keep talking to you because you still be able to hear me. But, so today's guest I met, and he is absolutely like genius at what he does. And so his name is Brandon Coty. He founded Coty Capital, which is a multifaceted investment firm specializing in private equity and real estate. But one of the companies that they recently started incubating is a startup called Impact Annex. And that has helped for-profit companies and entrepreneurs around the world starting digital nonprofits to create dual organizations. That's two, that allows you to grow with grants. Brandon has also given this idea of his company to a friend and now later come back to help build it. Without further ado, I'm going to bring Brandon in. We're going to have some fun, answer some questions. If you're here and you can click on the link and you have questions, I'll be able to see you and we'll be able to engage. But let's jump in. Brandon.
Perfect. Hey, Jonathan, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to have you here and just to get a chance because I know we had a pretty in-depth chat a couple weeks
Yep.
ago, like a month ago, about this, and it was just like I saw your post talking
hmm
about grants and all of that for businesses, and I was like, this is really interesting because Sasha and I had been talking about this and about the idea of grants and seeing how it could benefit our business, and you hear all the time how much money just never gets claimed, never gets used, and it just sits there and goes to waste. And then literally the same day we were talking about it, you showed up and had your post, and I was like, okay. And so I shot you a message, we shot back and forth and chatted, and then we chatted for a while. So why don't you just jump in? I know I gave a brief explanation of who you are and what you do, but like tell everybody who you are, what you do, and then we'll just dive in.
So I'm Brandon. Like my actual last name is Stevens, but I have my entire persona as Brandon Coty because let's face it, Brandon's a pretty boring name and Stevens is a pretty common name. So my middle name is Coty with a T. So just like the whole Gary V thing I was like, all right, well, if Gary V can do this, so can I. So I came in and I started branding myself as Brandon Coty. So just getting that out of the way, Coty's not actually my last name, but it's my middle name.
Well, there we
But
go.
that's how I kind of people know me. So I started a company called Coty Capital back during the pandemic. Just because it started like I didn't even know what I was doing. Just started a company like I'm really good at helping other people build things, right? Like I'm less of a person who can help myself build something from the ground up, but I'm very very good at helping other people build things from the ground up. And that's like a lot of personal understanding of yourself to be able to admit and go forward. So the best way to do that, I figured out, was to get into kind of like the private equity game, right? And start helping other people build stuff, like a company acquisitions or partnering with people for sweat equity and doing different things like that. Putting an investment into a company to help them grow, or putting capital, like relationship capital, resource capital. Like capital is more than just money, right? And so bringing resources, network, and all that stuff to people in exchange for equity to help them grow kind of became my thing. And we've been really good at it. So one of the companies that, is that your kid?
We're gonna have and with our family, and as everybody knows, we have little visitors. So this is Catherine. She's
Oh, she's
being
adorable.
spicy. Say hi to Brandon, Mr. Brandon. Mommy's giving you the stink eye, so you need to go with. Hey, you just take her. There we go. You can lock the door, honey.
That's cute. She's
Not that
adorable.
like derailing that train of thought.
That's fine. No. So basically one of my friends, like, and during the pandemic, just I'm totally ADHD, so I'm going to try to keep this centered for you. During the pandemic and all that stuff, I was like heavily focused on figuring out ways. Like we saw all these businesses going out of business because like they had to shut off their marketing, and like if you shut off your marketing when you're relying on that to get clients and you shut it off to save money, I mean, that's a downward spiral from there. Let's face it. So businesses were trying to save money by shutting off their marketing, cutting employees, cutting all the stuff that kept them afloat to grow and actually stay alive. And I really just started thinking, I was like, oh, we need to find ways to help businesses. Like I just need to find a way to help, businesses get a leg up on stuff that's happening in the pandemic. And long story short, I won't dive deep into it, but one of the things we ended up figuring out was from the Fortune 500 companies. Like if you look at all the big 500 companies and all the biggest companies in the world, they all have their hands in nonprofits. And when I connected with that, I was like, why? Why? Like everybody does something for a reason. Like why is it so common that these big companies have their hands in nonprofits? And I like internally as a human, I knew like, yeah, there were some people that like to give back, but there's a reason, right? Like it's like
they're not fully all altruistic and just want to just give.
Yeah, yes, right. Like, there you go. Right? Like human nature. Like I'm down for giving, but I'm a human. So if I'm a human, there's something on the back end that I'm probably getting out of it. And that's why I give, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that's bad by any means. That's perfect, because if you can give and get because you give, that's great. That's awesome. That's a great relationship to have. But I mean, everybody's view on this stuff was like, look at these companies, they give all this money to charity, all this stuff, but there's something more. I'm like, I was looking at it and I was like, there's more to this. And so I had I was following, I forget his name, but I was following somebody who ran a gym, right? And during the middle of the pandemic, something happened and they lost their business license and they're going to shut their business down, and they turned it into a nonprofit. And I was like, they just turned their gym into a nonprofit to survive the pandemic. I was like, something's there. And after I connected this and I saw this, I was like, all right, I need to start digging into this industry. Like I need to start digging into the world of nonprofits because there's something obviously bigger here going on that we don't understand. And when I started digging into it, I realized that major big companies, and this is just a habit of big companies. Small companies can do this too.
Okay.
But a lot of these big companies had built philanthropic arms of their companies, like nonprofit arms of their companies, that they then coincided with their large companies to do things beyond what a normal for-profit company could do. Get access to grants, leverage the social responsibility, leverage money that comes in. Now there's a fine line with this, right? Like if you get a grant on a nonprofit arm, if you build a nonprofit arm of your company, first of all, that's a separate entity, right? Second of all, you can't start that with the intention to share that money with your for-profit. That's illegal, right? That's not how we operate. So let's get that right off the board. But that being said, there is a very strategic way of doing things that these companies knew because they hired people to figure it out. And you can, by all means, 100% start a nonprofit company and then pair it with your for-profit to work hand in hand and get access to things like grants, crazy tax incentives, donations, fundraising, all that stuff that can be strategically used to also protect your for-profit company, if not completely build it alongside your for-profit company and use the nonprofit at the front of the company to then build your for-profit on the back. And it's completely legal to do stuff like that.
So you've
A
just
great example.
not to
Go ahead.
interrupt you, but you've just said a lot, and I know this is the second time you and I are talking about it, but like,
right,
you've said a lot, and I think a lot of people that are watching or listening to this are gonna go, whoa. So let's start. Let me, if you're okay with it,
go ahead.
let's go back. What is a digital nonprofit?
So a digital nonprofit is kind of this thing. So just to back up a little bit. The company I'm involved with is called Impact Annex, and the founder of the company is Ronaldo Santana, is a really good friend of mine, and I'm on board to help them build and grow, right? And so a digital nonprofit is something we kind of coined together, was the idea that nonprofits didn't have to be physical, right? So that's a big thing. A lot of people, when they think about nonprofits, is they think, oh, I got to build this. I got to build the next Habitat Humanity, right? No, you don't. No, you just don't. You don't, right? A nonprofit, or as we call them, digital nonprofits, can be strategically built organizations that are education based, that can come down to be like a podcast or a website or a media, like a purely digital online training company can be a nonprofit. It does not have to be physical in any way. It doesn't have to be a building. It doesn't have to have physical operations. It can be a digital asset to your for-profit company. Does that kind of help explain it?
No, totally does. Yes, yes. Okay. And how can let's just use me, my wife and I have a company.
Right.
How can creating the nonprofit, A, how do we do it? Is it easy? And two, how does it benefit us? And like, what is the difference between that and our for-profit?
Great. So what's your let's give an example. What do you sell on your for-profit side?
Coaching consulting. So we have a
Great. Who's your ideal customer?
If it would be, if we're in the consulting space, those with larger base business. It could be a local business. Say you're a dentist, a chiropractor that needs some marketing help. Let's say you're a larger company that's doing 4 or 5 million, and you need.
All right, let's just pick a random avatar. Let's pick dentist because you've brought on that or something. So let's just pick dentist. So this is great. So you have a for-profit company that's targeting those people, right? Like you're trying to get them to have an attention on you as a coaching and consulting company, right? You're trying to get in front of them. So why would somebody like you want to start a digital nonprofit? So before I get into this, let's talk about complexity of this. Well, first of all, raise your hand if you've dealt with the IRS before. Has it ever been easy? Has it ever been easy?
No.
And that's why we exist. That's why this company, I've made the time and investment to start incubating it and working with Ray and building it, is because it's not, first of all, that's not fun at all, dealing with the IRS. So to get a nonprofit incorporated, you are dealing specifically with the IRS, right? And you're dealing with several other instances between. Like a lot of people would hire a lawyer, they talk to your CPA. Well, the funny thing is, most lawyers have no idea what they're doing, and most CPAs have no idea what they're doing when it comes to nonprofits. When we started, before you and I met, I had tried to start a USA nonprofit, turning plastic into 3D printed filament to create new end products to then go in and protect against the supply chain curve of rising prices, right? Because if we could bring the supply chain local, it would solve a shit ton of problems. So I tried to start a nonprofit called Project 3D that way. And we ran through every freaking hoop imaginable, and it was just ridiculous, right? Like, so that was a little bit more complex than the digital nonprofit route that I'm like talking about, and how we teach people how to do things on Impact Annex. But it's proved the point that I was trying to prove to people was that nobody knows what the hell they're doing, right? Not even the people you hire, like lawyers, CPAs, attorneys, all these people, they don't know what they're doing because it's such a niche thing where a nonprofit is such a strategic thing to build. Like you specifically have to go out and find lawyers who have done nonprofits for years on end to then deal with them. And then you have to go out and find CPAs who have dealt with nonprofits for years on end to deal with them. And then you got to put it together. And then you can imagine the craziness in that, right? And then these guys don't even all know how to create a dual organization, which is another term we coined, which is how to make a nonprofit work with a for-profit. They don't know things like the digital nonprofit. They don't understand how your for-profit can create tax incentives by pairing it with your nonprofit. They don't understand how to get grants as the nonprofit and then use it legally with the for-profit without crossing lines. Like they don't understand these things. So even then, if you talk to them, they go, "Oh, no, you can't do that." right? And that's a lie. You can, they just don't know because they've never been taught that way. So it's hard, right? And when you start a nonprofit, if you do everything right, if you get everything good, if the IRS likes you and approves you. So first of all, there's two ways to start it, and one of the ways most people will use the long form, the 10, I think is a 1023 long. We just did our 501c3 for our housing foundation, esghousing.org, and we'll get tax exempt in like 6 to 9 months, maybe. Through that process, because we had to do it long. Like, it's a real estate foundation.
Now, you also told me there's two ways. There's the short way and there's the
Yes.
long way.
Yes. So the short way is the easy form, which is, again, if you don't know what you're doing, not easy. So funny there, but it's a quicker way to get tax exempt with some barriers on it. However, because on our team in Impact Annex, we brought somebody onto our team that has done nonprofits for politicians and government organizations and large fortune companies all over the world. He knows his way around everything. So we're really good with that. But the easy form is a way to get tax exempt quickly without needing to go through like 20, 30, 40 pages of stuff, and then 6 to 12 months of rigorous waiting with the IRS for them to review your stuff to maybe reject you for the 501c3 application. The 1023 easy, when done right, can almost guarantee you tax exemption, especially with our team. And so when we talk about digital nonprofits, we're not doing anything physical. So we fall under a certain guideline where we can have all the people that we work with do the easy form and go under that, especially with the guy who we hired on our team who knows how to navigate all this and word things correctly. So we drop the time to getting tax exempt in like 4 to 16 weeks.
And this is with the longer form or the easy form? Sorry.
Easy.
The easy form. Now, why should I mean, you've kind of explained this.
Yeah, I didn't get into the pairing of why you should do it. I just touched on the hard stuff. So why should somebody like you start a nonprofit? Well, I'll give you an example. So a digital nonprofit, if you were to set one up, focus, let's say your ideal customer or dentist, right? And that's who you're focusing on.
I'm going to change that on you if that's okay. Because we work with a lot of these people, a lot of people that are going to be watching this will have a company, but they serve, instead of B2B, which you can do B2B, but let's say I serve a customer. So my customer is a business owner, but they're a coach as well or something like that. Either way.
You want to target coaches? You want your ideal
coaches and entrepreneurs,
okay, cool.
Service-based entrepreneurs.
Yeah, so perfect. So let's say you want to target coaches or new entrepreneurs or coaches. So basically, and we use a very strategic process and how we set it up and how the person we brought onto the team that has knowledge on this sets it up and gets past IRS, like they know when you work with somebody who has done this for years and years and years, they know how the government responds to things. They know how people get behind things. So we set it up, a digital nonprofit. We set it up in files. So basically you start an organization. Nobody owns a nonprofit. You'd be the president though. So you become the president of a digital nonprofit and you start it to lead with education around what you do for your for-profit. All right. You with me so far?
Totally.
So if you're targeting coaches, your entire purpose of your digital nonprofit is to educate these coaches and new entrepreneurs on what you do as a for-profit company. Why? Because through a way we set it up and the way we have everything like planned out and systemized, not only can you fast track the 501c3 that way, but you can get access to grants, and it's almost a seamless way to integrate both your for-profit and nonprofit companies while keeping it completely legal. Why? Because when you have a nonprofit, which the entire mission of the nonprofits is to educate and empower a customer on what you do as a for-profit company, like the same problem. You don't mention your for-profit company like when the filing and all that stuff, but on the same problem, right? Then what can you do? You can capture data. You can build your customer list. So I'll give you one of the the very first grant we get all of our customers is the Google ad grant. That's $10,000 a month in free advertising for life. Right?
So you're saying
So
just by having a digital nonprofit doing this easy form, I can get 10 grand a month to market.
by doing it a very specific way, yes. It is not easy to figure out that very specific way unless somebody like us helps you do
Right.
it.
And I can market on Google, so that would be YouTube.
Yes,
or
I'll give you an example. So you're targeting coaches, right? So yeah, I'm sure you have digital assets, webinars, podcasts, for ebooks,
Right.
part of your program, whatever you sell, right? So imagine we all know what lead magnets are. So imagine creating a digital nonprofit around educating your ideal customer avatar, such as coaches or entrepreneurs, and stripping off some of those digital assets and giving them for free, right? To use as lead magnets to educate, empower your customers and capture their data. And then you're using the Google grant, which is just one of the grants you can get in the USA. So one of the things you can do to drive those ideal customers to you, capture their data, and then you make the decision on the back end. Who do I want to help on the nonprofit? Who do I want to help on the for-profit? Because you're fulfilling your mission by educating these people and then giving them access to it and empowering them. That's your entire mission of the nonprofit. Now you're fulfilling that mission from them signing up.
I can grow my list by educating.
Yes.
How do I then transfer that, and I'm educating, to my for-profit?
Because on the back end, you have an email list, text list, whatever, or maybe you're getting on phone calls. It is your job, because the mission of the nonprofit ends on the sign-up wall, because you're giving them what you promised them as a nonprofit. Okay. That data, what you do with that data is up to you. So what you can do is if you bring somebody to a webinar and empower them on a subject, and you give them all on that subject, and then at the end of the webinar, they book a call with you. When they get on that call, you can choose, do I want to help this person for free, or do I want to refer them to our for-profit program?
Got it. So then,
do you get what I'm saying?
Let's say I drive them to a call. Do I then need to initially say, let's say it's, instead of good marketing, it's good deeds. Hey, we're really glad we're here talking about good deeds. You know, as we've been talking, I feel like we have something that might be more interesting to you. And do I have to acknowledge that we're on a nonprofit call first?
The way you do it is you don't have to be blatant about it, but I suggest that because I mean, hey, look, the way you set it up is when people come through your funnel, everybody knows that this organization is an arm of the other organization. So by the time they get on the phone, what you say in the VSL, the webinar, the trainings, what you acknowledge there is what you precondition them to believe on the phone. So when you get on the phone, you don't have to be like, hey, we're a nonprofit. You get on the phone, you'll be like, hey, look, this is the intentions for the call and the program. I'll give you a great example. If you get on the phone with somebody and you're pitching like an 8-week accelerator or a program, when you get on the phone, you simply tell them some people will qualify for this for free as we do, because we give this away for free to people who need it as a nonprofit, and some people don't qualify and will need to buy it. Have a simple conversation like that. And that way, the people who applied, like when people, book a call with you when they put in their application, however you have it set up, now you make the decision on who qualifies for the nonprofit arm and the for-profit arm. And that way you're being completely transparent with yourself and those people, because you're actually helping people. If somebody comes in and they really can't afford it and they meet a specific criteria, then you can give it away for them. If they don't meet that criteria and they can afford it, then you're not giving it away. You're having a sales call.
Okay, so at the
that's just one way, by the way.
Say that again.
That's just one way, by the way. Just
so
one way. There's a ton.
Like having a digital nonprofit allows you to give things away for free and grow your for-profit list through the Google grant. Mm-hmm. And I know there's other ones. So that's $10K a month. And I'm sure there's specific guidelines for that. What are some of
Think
the
of
other
yourself
benefits?
like the best way to think about the Google grant is thinking of yourself as a data company.
Yes. And then okay, so there's that. What are some other benefits? Like what are the tax benefits? Like talk to me about all
So
the things of like why I need to do this.
you're going to like this one for the tax stuff. You're going to like this one. So on the tax side, we're going to talk about pairing it with the Google grant. This is really, this is really kind of cool. So you being the owner of the for-profit, you have a value on your time, right?
Yes.
So let's put a number to it. Let's use $100 an hour, more or less. Who cares? Let's just use that number, hundred
Okay.
bucks an hour. So, what if I could tell you you could either save money or make money on every phone call you got on, regardless of if they bought or not?
I mean, I'm down for that.
Right. So how that works is now you're running the Google grant, right? To your nonprofit to get people in your list, to get them on the phone and educate, empower them, and grow your list and help them and help the people who need it, and then refer the other ones that don't to your for-profit. You get on the phone for that, right? If you're doing a call funnel and you're pushing to the phone, or maybe you're not a coach or consultant, maybe you're a regular business, you're doing something to get on the phone. You're getting on the phone with your customers. If you get on the phone and you make it known that you're like, hey, I'm, Jonathan from the Guud Foundation and the for-profit arm of the company as well. If you lead it with that, you're now doing something really interesting because nobody owns the nonprofit. You're just the president of it. And you can be on the board of it. You're donating your time to the nonprofit from the for-profit company. Every single phone call you get on, you're donating your time. So as long as you track that and it's not something, as long as it's comparable to other people in your industry that would be donating their time for something like that,
Okay.
you can write it off. So let's say it's $100 an hour is worth your time, and that's normal for your industry and everything, and what the IRS will look at. So now every time you get on the phone, you can, if it's not a sale and they're not going to make a sale with you, you can now write off like that amount. So that amount you're donating to the nonprofit. You're donating $100 worth of your time to the nonprofit, which you then can technically write off on your taxes. Now, this gets interesting because that changes. I'm not a CPA. That changes over time. That is a strategy we teach our clients to then and build with our clients so they can then go to their CPA and be like, hey, make this work. Because now it's something that changes yearly for the amount, right? Like a couple years ago, you could write off a lot more about digital assets than you can right now. And that number changes. So that's something your CPA knows. We just know the strategy behind it. Does that make
Got it.
sense?
No, totally. So for every sales call, as an example, let's say it's a sales call, but I change the name of it and I put it as connection call. And in the Calendly form or whatever they're signing up for the call, it says Guud Foundation, a chat with Jonathan, president of Guud Foundation, and they already know on the front end it's part of the nonprofit. It's let them know on the front end any conversation call, any connection call, all becomes write-offable. I made up that word.
Yeah, you lead with the nonprofit. And because you're leading with a nonprofit, the minute you get on the phone, you're donating your time to the nonprofit. So then as long as you meticulously track that with your bookkeeper, your CPA, whatever you have, and you keep receipts and stuff of that, it becomes something you can write off on your taxes for the for-profit company because you're making a donation to a nonprofit. Yes, that's one you're also a part of, but it's still a nonprofit, right?
So literally, because a lot of people, let's say, for example, that may be watching this, if they do a lot of Zoom calls now, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they just go in and export their Zoom data every month for the length of calls that are specific to that, they can track that, send it to the CPA and say, this is the time I donated.
Yeah, I could. I'm hesitant to answer because I'm not a CPA myself. So I'm hesitant to answer on statistics like that. We just know the strategy and then have our CPA deal with it. right?
Yeah.
So, and that's the same thing. That's why we teach other people the strategy and say, hey, your CPA may say this is not possible. Get a new CPA if that's the case, because it is. You just need to find one who will be willing to implement this and can deal with it. That's the thing. But I don't like answering that question because I'm not a CPA, and I'm like, I know high level tax ideas, not the granular.
Yeah, it's kind of like make sure, and let me preface that with do your own research. Like, we are not
Yes,
tax
absolutely.
advisors, we are not accountants here, you know. So please make sure you get the information prior to like using what we're talking about. And I'm just talking hypotheticals for like in terms of like if I'm driving a car and I can write off mileage, it's like every time I get in the car.
The same way you would track everything else you would write off normally is how you would track this. Perfect. Like you got to have a paper trail.
And then, so that makes sense why entrepreneurs should start one, because there's the tax benefit. You can write off your own time. You can get the Google grant.
That's a lot right there.
I
but
mean,
that's
huge. It really
it's crazy. Like it's great. I mean, it's crazy because like also, it's a way to protect your company because you can also get paid as a nonprofit.
Explain that to me, because I was always under the assumption of like a nonprofit ends up with a zero at the end. You know what I mean?
So for profit, yes. But I mean, like, it's like, how do I put it? I loved it. I love this conversation. Me and Ray love this so much because I grew up in a world where nonprofits were broke.
Right.
We're just broke people who don't make money ever, nonstop. But some of the biggest, wealthiest organizations in the world are nonprofits, and that's the funny part. It's because at the end of the year, like you can't hold, like you can't have excess profit and give it back to the president. That's not how they work. That's illegal. Like that's not, I don't know if the correct term is illegal. It's just frowned upon. It's not how they work. But you rightfully can get paid as a president or somebody in the nonprofit. You just can't get paid to hold that position, right? So if you're like our guy, the guy who we have that does all the paperwork with the IRS and stuff, he taught it to us brilliantly when he joined our team. He said, think of it like using 3 hats, right? So you're the president, you may be the officer, and you can't get paid for either of those positions. But let's just say you're also, you're also doing work in the nonprofit. Let's say you're the marketer of the nonprofit, right? So when you go to run Google ads for the nonprofit, you're taking off the president and officer hat, and you're totally legally 100% allowed to be paid as the marketer of the nonprofit because you're employed by the nonprofit, right? So what is the average salary for that position for the nonprofit in your industry? That's what you should be able to get paid. And it's totally legal to get paid that way. You're wearing 3 different hats. And most digital nonprofits and smaller nonprofits only run by a handful of people.
Right at an amazing point. Oh, come here. All right. Well, this is 4 kids in a household. You want to say hi to Brandon again? He was just telling us about how you can get paid working for a nonprofit. It's pretty exciting.
She's like, I don't care.
No, you do stuff. That's my smart 7-year-old. Will you please take Catherine so I can do this? Thank you. Go.
She's cute.
Go. Lock the door for me and then shut it when you go. Okay.
So I mean, you should.
So basically,
if you're going to care about the world, you should get paid. Go ahead.
I was saying. So essentially, you become an employee when you're doing a specific position, and so you have the right. You have the ability to earn what that position would get.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the same way if you're. It's the same way if you were to be employed by any company and then they track the salaries across the industry and then they're comparable and give you the salary comparable to those positions of their competitors type of deal. Like it's the same thing. And like the IRS, you have to make a case for it, of course. But so it's like if the average position in your industry is $50,000 a year to, do whatever position you've declared for as a nonprofit, and you're paying yourself like $200,000 a year. All right, there's a red flag there. But and some people would completely overthink this. They don't need it ballparked. They don't need it to the exact number. You can ballpark it. You just have to look at 5, 10 similar positions and be like, what's the average what's the average umbrella paid for this position, and then the IRS isn't going to question that when you file.
Cool. Okay. Are there any other benefits that I don't know that you haven't said? Because I mean, I'm like, I need to get one set up right now. But like
Fundraising, fundraising example that the people who donate to you can get tax write-offs.
Okay.
That's a big one. Again, I'm not a CPA, so I'm not going to go into the statistics of that. But essentially, it's how this works. So every time if you're a nonprofit, you want to raise money, right? So it's like you want to raise money to, like, a normal nonprofit, an organization would raise money to have operations and fulfill what they need to do. When you raise money as a nonprofit, the people giving you money, they want to be enticed to give you that money. So normally, like, that's either through a service or a product, or, like, just raising donations, right? And the easiest way usually is just to raise money to do things good in the world. Well, one of the way nonprofits have been able to do this is because they give you, like, if you give my 50, you have to be a 501c3 to do this. So if you give my 501c3 money, yep, we can cut you a receipt that you can then use to reduce your tax liability.
Got it. Okay, that I totally get.
That number changes on what you donate. If it's just cash, is a certain percentage. It depends on the state you're in. It's all over the board. That number is, like, not something that I can go into, but I will just briefly explain. It will reduce your tax liability if you want to pay less taxes, because it's the same way. If you answer the phone call as your, for your nonprofit, and you're the owner of the for-profit company, you're donating your time to the nonprofit, and you can write that off. It's the same idea. You're just now using cash.
So, okay. And then, so let me ask this. So I'm a nonprofit. I have my educational arm, plus I have my for-profit, and part of my for-profit is helping by teaching, and I have a course, right? Can I donate my course to someone, scholarship, say them in or whatever, and
get a tax write-off?
As a tax write-off? Because as a for-profit,
yes,
I've talked to my accountant, and they're like, you cannot do that.
Like, if you donate it to a nonprofit, yes, digital assets can be donated.
So I can say, I have my thing. I'm gonna donate 5 to my nonprofit to give out as scholarships, and those can be tax write-offs.
Yes, that is a strategy. We know how to teach it. Again, CPA has to do it for the person, but yes, that is legal, and it works, and it is a thing, and it is a strategy, and it's actually a brilliant marketing strategy. It's really, really good. Okay. But essentially, it does come down to one factor that you have to pay close attention to. A bunch of this whole thing comes down to industry comparables. So what is the average price of a course in your industry? All right. That is what the IRS is going to look at for the legality of that being a tax, like donation to the nonprofit. If you're in an industry where most courses for what you do is $997, and you're saying that this one's worth, like $20,000, and you want that donated, there's going to be a red flag there. So it comes down to industry comparables. That's why we always say you have to figure that out, and you have to work with CPA. But yes, all day, you can donate digital assets to the nonprofit and then get a write-off for that.
Okay. Why doesn't everybody know this?
Because most people think nonprofits are broken. They're and honestly, they're a big pain in the ass to build, like to actually set up and do, because it's not marketed, because it's like, it's one of the, that's a great question. It's one of those things where it took us over a year to figure it out. And that was from going at it ourselves, trying to figure it out, right? Trying to put the mechanisms and everything in place to figure it out and get the right people on the team. We went through many lawyers and CPAs to even get a grasp on what's possible. Okay. By chance, we were able to find somebody who had done this at a high level for a long time, who really liked the idea of what we wanted to start and join our team, right? So that was like, by chance, we were able to incorporate that person into our team and build our team around that. So that was beautiful. Then by chance, we were able to find somebody who had ran hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in Google ad grants for clients across for at nonprofits across the like the world, the USA, different countries, etc. And he wanted to join our team because of what we wanted to build, and he liked the idea. Both these people confirmed what we were doing was possible. They just didn't know how to, like the one of them didn't know how to set up one side, the other one didn't know how to set up the other. So we put it together. And then we figured it out from there. And it was like, wow, this is a machine that can work. And then we got it confirmed by one of our lawyers that actually knew what they were talking about.
So how come then you are, I mean, I'm assuming you've set it up in your business. How come you're sharing it rather than building it yourself?
We are. Well, in a way. So I'll give you a great example. So me and Ray, we again, you don't own a nonprofit. You're the president, you're the vice president, you're on the board of it, etc. So Ray's the president of a nonprofit called ESG Housing Inc. I'm the vice president. Now, Ray owns a real estate company called the Coty Capital Group. I own my firm, which is Coty Capital, right? ESG Housing Inc. is a real estate organization. Now, mind you, it's not a digital nonprofit. It's a real nonprofit. And that's because we went into the world of real estate with it. That's a whole different animal, right? So the vision we built was an easy, streamlined way for any entrepreneur to start a nonprofit. Just get that out of the way. That's Impact Annex. What we're doing with ESG Housing is a real like Habitat for Humanity type of deal. The reason we started it was because we're both kind of like Ray's a real estate nut. I wanted to get into real estate, but we had figured out the nonprofit thing. And if you go back to the pandemic, what was one of the biggest problems with, I don't know how into the real estate world you are, but I don't know, like, what was one of the biggest problems in the pandemic between landlords and tenants?
Paying rent?
Yes, right? Landlords were losing money hand over fist, and tenants, like, they weren't paying rent or they couldn't pay rent. And then the minute the pandemic was over, they got evicted, right? Because they weren't paying rent. So me and Ray kind of figured out, we're like, well, we can start a real estate foundation that gets put into other real estate like deals and companies. Like we can come in. So he has a for-profit real estate company and we're part of a real estate foundation. So if we take down a deal under Coty Capital Group and then we give a percentage of the equity to ESG Housing, we can now do a couple really cool things. One of those cool things is we can provide rent protection to the deal. What's rent protection? It's the case that with their money raised under ESG Housing, we can now, by the way, that's tax-free money we've raised, right?
Okay.
We can now, in the event of a pandemic or a crisis or any other situation we deem necessary, cover our tenants' rent should they not pay it for that deal. Who does that protect?
I mean, kind of everyone.
Yes, and the investors on the deal itself. And so on top of that, because our nonprofit is an affordable housing arena and being able to actually build back housing and economies and stuff, we can do some really cool stuff. We can, as long as the nonprofit has equity in the deal, we can use the charity from that nonprofit to improve the deal and improve the housing of that deal without us having tax implications in doing so. We can use rent protection. We can build upon the property. We can do some really cool stuff. We can if at the end of the deal, way down the road, like I said, don't know how much you know about real estate. We could sell that home to our nonprofit entirely, and we receive a wicked tax break for doing that. And then the nonprofit can then take it over and turn it into affordable housing through its own means, right? Which we're still working for, and we still get paid, but in a different arena to deal with it. And we can just build a lot of cool things, and by combining the two and going down that route. There's more cool stuff we can do with it, but it's just the idea of we use the nonprofit to protect the investment, right? And in doing so, we're also providing affordable housing. We're increasing living. We're increasing the ability to, like, we're hedging against the next pandemic. We're doing some cool stuff, and that's just one example, but by involving a nonprofit into for-profit deals and for-profit operations that way, everyone wins because you're focusing on impact. So yes, we're winning on the back end, but everyone wins on the front. It's a win-win-win situation. Nobody loses, like, if you get what I'm saying. And it's just a switch of how we operate. Like, we're raising money. Like, if we go and raise, like, one of our first projects is a teeny home community, right? We're trying to find a place right now in Massachusetts to build our first teeny home development community, right? And we're going to build it. We're going to raise money under the nonprofit to build it, right? Well, a lot of people don't realize that nonprofits can invest in investment vehicles such as stocks and real estate and bonds and whatever the hell they want, right? You just got to clear your lawyer. A lot of people don't think you can make investments. We have a buddy who does he runs an investment style company. I once consider an investment company, but he gets like 25 to 32% returns every 6 months on the dot for the past like 10 years, right? And so we can invest large sums of money with him. Our lawyer cleared that as an investment vehicle for a nonprofit, right? So what does that mean? We raise a couple hundred, like, I'll give an example. So let's leave it at the low end, 25% every 6 months. That's 50% of your returns, right? He has a track record. So let's say we go raise $100,000. We put it in with him. And we put it in with him to grow our foundation as a nonprofit. We're now receiving $50,000 a year, tax-free, to further our mission as a nonprofit. Now, mind you, we're not taking that as the people who run the nonprofit. That is, it has to go to the nonprofit. We have to build our mission with that. But now we have a foundation to build from, right? So now we're getting $50,000 a year as a company, right? For investing $100,000 as a nonprofit. We take that $50,000, we put it into building teeny homes, right? So we buy the teeny homes with that money. Now that we buy the teeny homes with that money, guess what? Somebody needs to manage the teeny homes. Now we can pay ourselves for those roles as the nonprofit and continue to build goodwill in the marketplace.
As someone just said, I want to say it too. Wow. Like, I mean, the benefits and the advantages continue to grow, and it's just also knowing exactly what industry you're in and what your plan is. And you're doing something in real estate, which is definitely a lot more complex.
Yes. But yeah, what we're doing is a lot more complex than what we teach in Impact Annex, and there's a reason for that, because if we go that route with everybody, it takes a ton of time, right? So we were able to streamline a way to make it beneficial for almost any for-profit company on the planet to start a nonprofit, right? And still receive specific benefits to grow their mission as a for-profit company and put goodwill in the world. That's why we did it the digital nonprofit route. If we were to dive deep into what we're doing, then that comes down, that's like going custom work. That's like for every specific person, individual, and spending a lot of time with them. But we wanted this to be something that we could teach a lot of people and help a lot of people implement without it being super labor intensive on us.
Got a couple questions too. Someone asked, why do you equate nonprofit to free?
What do they mean by that?
I'm not sure. I think we were talking about something, so I was just repeating it. Like, I think.
Oh, you mean in the beginning, like when I grew up and everybody? Oh, because like I don't know where you are in the world, but New England, when you like nonprofit, I think what they meant was, why did I equate nonprofit to being broke or not having money?
Got it.
And the reason for that is, in New England, anybody up here trying to start a nonprofit was generally running around begging for money. And that was the consensus of the idea. That's not an opinion of mine. That's just what it was. And I was conditioned over time, like, okay, why would I want to start a nonprofit? It's just people looking for handouts. But that's not what it is. But that's what a lot of people are conditioned to think. I'm not saying that's you. I'm saying that in the majority, that's what a lot of people are conditioned to think, is people just start an organization as a nonprofit to run around for handouts, to do stuff, and then they never pay themselves. And that's not the case.
Got it. Okay. And then you talked about this earlier, the Google grant, and there's a ton of, how do you guarantee the Google grant for your nonprofits?
So it's for our clients, it's on the way we set it up. So we have done this enough that we know exactly what they're looking for. And the Guud grant is one of the only grants that is not seasonal and situational, right? It is situational in the term that you have to meet some specific criteria. But if you paid attention, what I've talked about on the digital nonprofit side, we create every organization to meet that criteria.
Got it. So from the get-go, from the rip, it's being built in a way
You
setting you
get
up for
approved for that.
success, that it meets, it crosses the T's, it dots the I's, so there isn't a
Yes.
question, there isn't an issue.
Yes, because almost every grant out there that you get will be based on your organization, based on your situation, based on your activities, based on the season, the time of day, whatever, right? Like they're all situational. The Google grant is one of the only ones on the planet that's not situational. So we wanted to, if we were going to do this, we're like, we want to streamline people's ability to do this and get something really cool out of it, right? And so we're like, all right, well, if this grant is always going to be there, it's just a matter of having to do everything very specifically and building a system that is repeatable so our customers can get it. We're like, then this is what we want to focus on. From the start, we want to be trying to achieve that as an outcome. Does that make sense?
Yes. You've created a system that basically works to your advantage to check all the boxes along the line instead of having to fix it.
Yeah, because most nonprofits don't even have that grant. Like most people who just start nonprofits and build, we did funny. So me and Ray did a webinar. I don't know if you know Anderson Business Advisors, but we occasionally do webinars for them to their slews of nonprofits. And a lot of people in there didn't have the Google grant, and they were like well-built, run organizations, like people who had nonprofits for a while. And some of them didn't even know they could get it. And it was like blowing my mind, because it's like we do it from the start, so that's just a byproduct of how we set everything up.
That's amazing. Awesome. Well,
and that was not a dig on Anderson. I absolutely love those guys, so don't take that wrong.
No, not at all. I'm just saying, you don't know what you don't know, and this is hearing it for the second time. I learned a lot more this time. I mean, this has been so helpful for me. I mean, it really makes me understand the power behind it and what you can do, and not just helping your for-profit, which is great, but really doing something to make a difference in the world, while at the same time being able to put food on your table. And
you want to hear one more that's kind of crazy, that it doesn't really, it's a crazy thing that we figured out, and it blew my mind, but it's not. It's funny because it's not really going to be for the audience, but it's just a fact, that part of us that we got into. So you don't need to have anybody in the world can start a US nonprofit, and you don't need to live here.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't really help me because I live here, but that's really fascinating for people.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it won't help anybody on this call typically, unless some people are, in different countries, but it's a really strange fact. So we were on a call with our guy on our team. He's our grant and nonprofit advisor at the big level, deals with all the IRS and all that stuff. And we have every 2 weeks we get on a call with him just to go over operations and new stuff he's figured out, stuff he's known. And he's known that he's helped tons of different countries incorporate US, people in different countries incorporate US nonprofits. And we had asked him a question. He had not brought this up to us before. And me and Ray had asked him a question, and he's like, oh yeah. He's like, no, he's like crazy thing. He's like, anybody can start one. I was like, what? I'm like, so you could be in the Philippines and start a US nonprofit. He's like, yeah, you don't need a board. He's like, I recommend having a board member over here. He's like, but you don't need one. I was like, how does that, what? How is that? I was like, what? Why would we as a government in a country I just don't understand, but it's really interesting.
That is really interesting, especially for, we do know a bunch of, people from overseas in different countries. That's really, really interesting.
Yeah, we're also we have several partnerships in different countries that we do. We do a lot of the time. We do U.S. foundation, U.S. nonprofits, but we also can do Canada nonprofits. It's a different thing, but it's anybody in the world can get a Canada nonprofit as well, and it's just a dialed back version of the U.S. nonprofit, which means all that means is you can get the Google grant through it, but you can't raise money and have the tax incentives that you would on the U.S. side.
And I would assume that you would walk your clients through best case scenario, best choice for them and their business.
Yeah, type of deal. And it's also it's on based on with us, it's based on we we base it on like what you're looking for. Like we have two programs and I'm not going to pitch them here, but like basically it's like where are you in your business? What are you looking for? What would fit you the best? Because some people we meet, and you'd think this is crazy, but some people we meet, like if you do a US digital nonprofit, I'm not going to say it's going to consume your life because it's not, but it's like starting another organization. That it is. It's starting another organization. So you kind of got to treat it like one because then you got the yearly, like you have everything set up. You got to run it like one. However, if you do it the Canada one, you'd still get access to the Google grant because we build it from the ground up to do that. But it's kind of more of having a digital asset instead of having a second organization, if that makes sense. I know that can get a little confusing, but because it's a dialed back version, you can run it a bit differently. And it's always going to be the same amount yearly to file. And it's always going to be the same amount. Like we have that version ballpark to the exact expense it would cost somebody yearly to run the entire thing.
Got it. So Canada nonprofit just is like way easier, way cheaper, less hands-on maintenance. US based, and there's two versions, the easy and the hard.
We don't do
more benefits, but you have
we don't run any of our clients through the long form. And we don't do that for the simple fact that it's convoluted as all hell. Like it's a lot of work. We can, but we don't. So like if you came to me, if we're in a network and we're in like, and I know you and I know what you're trying to do, and you came to me and you're like, hey, Brandon, can you introduce me to Ray? I really want to do a long form one. Like we're trying to build out this big thing. Basically how I look at it is this. If you're starting like a real estate nonprofit, we would have to do the long form and we can help you with that. But our operations are geared towards our programs, which always use the easy form so we can streamline everything. And our guy knows how to do this 100% correctly with what we have built to comply with the easy form and make everything work correctly for that client. So we can do the long, but you don't need it unless you're starting an organization where you immediately think you're going to raise a ton of money.
So forget the long form. So essentially then, to reiterate, the Canada nonprofit is simple, easy, Google grant, and it's limited.
Yeah, but it's highly limited.
Yeah, highly limited, hands-off, more digital asset, whereas US-based nonprofit is Google grant.
You want to build a true dual organization.
But you have to run it like an organization.
Yes, the true like board meetings, which are not that you can have a 30-minute board meeting. You can set that up. There's templates for that, like type of deal. But you have to run. You get what I'm saying? Like you start a LLC, you hire a bookkeeper, you hire a tax guy, you get this stuff involved. A Canada one, you can do all this yourself. It's not a problem. We teach you how. Very easy to deal with. The US one, it's like building a second arm of your company, a second organization. You have to run it like one to make everything. And the trade-off is you get a lot more, but you have more work involved.
Hey, Brandon, this has been amazing. Like the amount of information that you've just dropped is going to it blows my mind in what you can do. So for our listeners and people watching this that are like, okay, I want to find out more information. I don't know how this looks. And I know you help people with it. What is the best way for somebody to get in touch with you?
So we have, I'm going to send them to a website. So we have a website called www.impactannex.org, right? And as long as you type in that URL, we built I helped my founder, Ray. I love him to death. We built a landing page that talks about almost every question you can have, every objection, and just explains it outright. And then you can opt in to watch a training about how all this works. And then after you watch the training, if you want to work with us, we don't hide the price. or any of that stuff, it's right on the page. And then you just put in, if you figure out if you can afford it, cool. You sign up for, you click the button, you apply for the program you want, and somebody from that team will reach out to you. But it's a very streamlined system, because after all the people we've done this for, we started getting the same questions, the same everything. So we wanted to tackle that head on, because it is a complex subject, and we wanted to minimize the questions people had. So over time, we built this really strategic landing page that could not only show you what we do and who we've done it for and examples, but also tackle those questions and then send you to a webinar to present the information that you actually want to know to how to set this up and why it's for you. And none of it is truly salesy at all, because I'm not obviously you need sales and stuff, but it's something that kind of sells itself with the concept once you understand it. So we've had zero need to hard sell anybody for this.
No, I mean, it's based on you're hey, we're going to help you save money on taxes and make some money. So there you go. So impactannex.org to reach out to you. And if somebody who's watching this is coming through this, is there a place where they can be hey, I saw you on the What's Good with Jonathan?
Yeah, so if you go to that website, we actually have it set up so when you apply with us, it's a referral thing. So they will ask who referred you or where did you come from, and it's a required answer, so they have to answer. And we always double check that on the phone as well. So at some point, they're going to tell me they came from you.
Perfect. Well, if they do that, I know we haven't even discussed this, but maybe anybody that comes from them, maybe they can give you an extra hug and a kiss or figure something out, because I know Brandon is super kind and really wants to help a lot of people. No guarantees, but you know what? I'm going to wrap this up. Brandon, you have been incredibly insightful. This whole grant space and nonprofit seems like such a big nut to crack, but you've really...
Yeah, and John, look, if you want to do, I don't know how many of these podcasts you do with your audience and stuff, but if you want to talk about this subject again, I can get Ray on with you instead of me, and you can have this conversation with the guy who's running all the operations.
That might not be a bad idea. I mean, I'm going to be doing these quite a bit, and so maybe we'll get Ray on, maybe have you and Ray on, and we can dive in deeper and have a bigger conversation about it. But this has been so insightful, and I really appreciate it. You spending the second time with me and with
I enjoyed it.
All of the audience. And again, impactannex.org if this is something you want to get more information about. What if people wanted to connect with you personally?
At the Brandon Coty, so THE Brandon BRANDONCOTY, any social media channel, that's my handle. And you can always just email Brandon@CotyCapital.com, and Coty is COTY. So Brandon@CotyCapital.com, and that's my direct email. It'll come to my inbox, and we just talk to me, just ask questions. I mean, I'm a firm believer in leading with education, because that's what we teach at Impact Annex anyways. So I'm always my entire company, Coty Capital, is structured around networking, right? And then Impact Annex is structured around leading with education. So no matter what, I'm entertaining conversations all day long.
I love it. This has been great. Thank you so much, Brandon. I really appreciate it. For all you out there, this is What's Good with Jonathan, and we will see you soon. Have an awesome day. Reach out to Brandon and Impact Annex if you want more about this.